Good evening, everyone. We continue our study in the book of Second Samuel, reading from verse 1. Now, this was a time when Avshalom had already ran away. And in the previous chapter, he had ran away to Geshur, somewhere in the area of Syria, as we can see today. For a number of years has passed, and it says, now. This word is another and then. And then the Joab, the son of Zeruiah, uh, perceived. Now the word perceived here comes from the word know. And perceive is actually a good word. And then Joab learn to know, right? That would be a good way of doing that as well. Learn to know, perceive, discern, right? All these are good words. What Joab probably did was he saw how David longed for Avshalom. And that would be the discussion of verse 1, that the king's heart toward Avshalom. This word toward can also be translated as, say, regarding, regarding, right? Uh, Concerning, and these are all good words. And basically, the idea here, it's not about was drawn, it was longing. It gives us a picture of longing, right? So the king's heart, everything the king was thinking about, right? Remember, the word heart means the mind. His mind was preoccupied with Avshalom. That would be the meaning of verse 1. As such, after Joab learned about the king's longing, or has now discerned how the king feels towards Avshalom, we read the continuation. And then Joab sent. Now, this is a common word that you see from chapter 11, when the word says, uh, Yishlach, or send. It is always with regards to sending a messenger, right? Not servants, a messenger uh, to Tekoa. Now, Tekoa is somewhere in the, I would say, the Ephraim area. I think it's in the Ephraim area. You can read Amos, right? Amos chapter 1, verse 1. He was the shepherd of Tekoa. And And then this word here, and then he brought a wise woman from there and then said to her, so all these are and thens, right? And then, and then. So this is a way of giving us a picture of a sequence of events. So Yoav sent, and then he brought, and then he said, all three things. What did he say? He says, please follow mourning rites, uh, and put on mourning garments now, and do not anoint yourself with oil. Now, the idea of anointing with oil is similar to modern day, when women apply perfume, right? But be like a woman who has been mourning for the dead for many days. So this is a plan, right? This is a plan. This is a plan of to serve this purpose, because Joab sees how the king's heart, the king's mind was preoccupied with Avshalom. Joab then is hatching a plan to see how the king's heart would be resolved uh, by bringing Avshalom home. And so in verse 3, it says, and go to the king, and this would be David, uh, and speak to him this way. Now, notice these are not and thens, right? These are not and thens. These are all ands. Why? Because it is a conversation. This is not a sequence of events that's happening. That's why it is said this way. And so the conjunction in the Hebrew is very important for us to see and read clearly. Now, this word so would be and then. After saying all these and discussing with the woman or the wise woman, Joab put the words in her mouth. Now, this is the way that the Hebrew says it. Put the words. Put the davar, right? Davar. And this would be establish or appoint. Basically telling her what to say. Now, perhaps this statement would be the precursor to how we would use these words, right? To put the words into somebody's mouth. So it doesn't carry the same connotation today, but in those days, we can see Joab discussed with the woman and told the woman how to say things. And so that would mean, or tantamount to be, putting words into her mouth. In verse 4 tells us this. Now, this would be, and then, this is a sequence of event. The woman of Tekoa spoke to the king, and this is David, right? This is David. Now we have another word here that's missing, and then when she came to speak to the king, she fell on her face to the ground, right? Now, this word here, fall with the face to the ground, literally means the nose to the ground. Now, interestingly, this does not say face, it says nose. But in the English, when you translate, it doesn't sound quite nice when you say her nose on the ground. So the translator changed the word from nose to face because it would mean something to the English. The ground here would be the soil. This would be the Adamah. And then she prostrated herself. Remember, prostrate? The hand in front, all the way down. It's prostrating. This is a very oriental, and the Hebrews picked it up as well. And then, while she was on the ground, she said these words. It says here, Toshia. Toshia Hamelech. Uh, Basically, the word Toshia means save. Uh, Save me, right? Or save, not help. Save, O king. And this is very much like the ancient appeal. When somebody goes to seek justice, I guess if you have watched some of the old Chinese movies where you've got a judge like Bao Qingting, somebody will come to the court and ring the gong, so that that would symbolize an appeal for justice. And they would say, justice, save me. And this is how the woman is now playing this role. Remember, the woman doesn't have any problems at all. This is all a show or an act made to lead the king to feel for Avshalom. And so it says, save, O king. Verse 5. And and then again, here we have the statement after the woman cries out, save, O king. And then David says to her, uh, uh, what to you? Meaning, what's wrong? What is wrong? That would be our modern way of looking at it. And so this is in a form of a question. And then again, here you can see this is, and then you can't have this happening before the one before David says. And then she answered, and she said this, truly I am a widow. A widow means a woman who has no man, right? I am uh, a woman widow, right? Meaning a female who has lost the husband. So my man is dead. And so this word husband is man. So a woman without her man is a widow. In the ancient days, when you don't have a man, it is a very pitiful thing that a woman has no one to protect her, have no one to stand up for her. And so the woman, in this case, came to appeal to David, playing this role as a widow so that David would empathize with her, would take pity on her. And she gives this story. The story works this way, and your servant or your maid servant, this is a woman servant. When she calls herself a servant, this is a maid servant. So this is the woman who claims to be a widow. He says, I have two sons, but the two of them fought in the field. There was no one to save them, right? To save them. The idea here is to, how should we say, to save them from each other. Um, this word, to save them from each other, is to separate them, to take them apart when they were fighting. And then one of them struck the other, uh, and then killed him, and then killed him, and he died. This is the story now that is this being relayed by the woman to King David. In verse 7, it says, and behold, the whole clan, this is not just a family, the clan, has risen against your maid servant. It indicates it's a woman servant. And then they have said, hand over the one who struck his brother so that we may put him to death for the life of his brother whom he killed. And if that was the case, it will destroy the heir as well. Now, which is heir, uh, this word heir is important. I think that we can actually look at this. Uh, he says, and eliminate his the life of his brother, and also destroy uh, the possessor, right? The heir, one who will take possession. Now, understand in the Hebrew culture, the boys, especially the firstborn son, they are the ones who will inherit whatever comes down from the father. And so this is, if the other son was killed, then the heir would die as well. Now, and then it says, and then they will extinguish my coal which is left. Uh, the idea here of a coal that is left is that this is the hope that she has holding up in the one child to be the heir, to be the seed of the husband, so as to leave my husband neither name nor remnant on the face of the Adamah. Adamah is soil. And so this is to say she is now in a dilemma that one child killed the other, and now whoever is left would be the heir of the husband. Husband has died, but the rest of the clan says, no, we have to punish him because he has killed the brother. And this whole story being hatched up or being invented is really to lead David to think a particular way. Now, David says in verse 18, and then the king said to the woman, go to your house, uh, and then, and then I will issue orders regarding you to do something about this, right? And then the woman replied in verse 9, says, the woman of Tekoa said to the king, my lord the king, let the guilt be on me and my father's house. That is how she is saying, let the guilt, what guilt? The guilt in the event that the king forget to issue orders about the woman. Then the king will be wrong. But the woman says, no, no, no. In the event that you forget, let it be on me, right? But the king and his house, his throne, remains innocent. This is because I have come to seek for your help. And if you have in some way forgotten about me later on, I will not hold it against you. Now, the reason why the woman is saying that is because this whole story is fake. This whole story is made up. So there cannot be any critical repercussion against David on a story that they have concocted for the benefit of David. Verse 10, the soul would be, and then the king said, whoever speaks to you, bring him to me, and he will not touch you anymore. Uh, the idea of touch in this case, uh, I guess you could say, he would not disturb you. I think disturb is a good modern word. The idea here is not physically touching, but in the engagement, touching her and causing her grief because she is to give up her other son to be slain as punishment. So verse 11 says this, and then she said, may the king please remember the Lord your God. This is important. Notice the woman now refers to God. Please remember, bring to mind, bring to mind about God Himself, that the avenger of blood will not continue to destroy. Otherwise, they will destroy my son. And this is to remind him that God Himself will have mercy on her son. And then he said, this is a sort of a swearing, right? An oath. As the Lord lives, I think this is important for us to take a look. As the Lord lives, and God continues to live, so it will have to happen that not one hair of the sun shall fall to the ground. This is a guarantee. Right? This is a guarantee by David that nothing is going to harm the child. After this, these serious words, right? These serious words. Verse 12 says, and then after this happened, and then the woman said, and she speaks in a very humble voice, please let your maid servant speak a word to my lord the king. And then David says, speak. Verse 13. Verse 13 then opens up the story. The woman said, or, and then, right? And then the woman said, why have you planned such a thing against the people of God? For in speaking this word, the king is like the one who is guilty. The king does not bring back his banished one. His banished one would be Avshalom. Why did you do this? He says, how could you uh, think about such a thing about the people of God uh, when there is nobody that he sent allowed Avshalom to be sent away, or else he ran away. And the whole discussion here is that the word refers to the story of the woman, and it mirrors for Avshalom, and it's really a leading story. And the king had mentioned a number of things, and if it happens to be Avshalom, what would you say? Verse 14, for we will surely die, and our water spilled on the ground, which cannot be gathered up. These are all Hebrew expressions, which is very oriental. Some of this may mirror to statements like, the rice has become porridge. Things of that nature. It's like water spilled to the ground. You can't pick it up again. And then the woman says this. The woman says, but God does not take away life, but makes plans so that the banished one will not be cast out from him. Now, this is important. The banished one, Avshalom, is to be seen by God as somebody who still has value because he is alive. This is talking about God valuing the sanctity of life. God is not in a hurry to kill people, except in some instances. But by and large, he tries to preserve people. In verse 15, verse 15 says, and now and then, the reason I've come to speak this word to my lord the king is that the people have made me afraid. And your maidservant says, let me now speak to the king. Perhaps the king will perform the request of this slave. The request, the word, this is also davar, of his handmaid. Now it's interesting that the Bible keeps changing. The translation keeps changing the word, but this is important for us to realize. This is a handmaid, not a maid servant, but along the same lines, that this is a female made. Verse 16. Verse 16, for the king will listen to save his slave from the hand of the man who would eliminate both me and my son from the inheritance of God. And in that story, David was willing to protect this woman from any untoward incidents. Verse 17, then your servant said that this is the maid servant. Please let the word of my Lord the king be comforting. For as, well, this word here, as the angel of God, so is my Lord the king to discern good and evil. And may the Lord your God be with you. And what does this mean is that God is to preserve life. And the woman is suggesting that that the king is able to well, this word discern uh, is to hear, not to see, but to hear what is good and what is evil. And so may Jehovah, your God, be with you. This is to say, God will preserve, that David should be wise in this matter. That's all that's being discussed here. And it's the direction of the story is moving towards Absalom and to encourage David to do something about it. Verse 18, and then the king answered, right? And then the king answered, and then the king said to the woman, please do not hide anything from me that I'm about to ask you. And the woman said, and then the woman said, let my lord the king please speak. And so verse 19 says, and then, right? And then after that it said, and then the king said, is the hand of Joab with you all this? And the woman replied, and then the woman replied, as your soul lives, my lord the king, no one can turn to the right or to the left from anything that my lord the king has spoken. This is to say that David is very capable, right? Capable. What is important here is David is seen to be to see everything, right? To see everything, nothing hidden. That is how the woman is now portraying the story. Nothing escapes you. So indeed, it was your servant Joab who commanded me, uh, and then and it was he who put all these words in the mouth of your servant. So whatever I said to you is actually from Joab. Verse 20. Verse 20 says this: in order to bring about the appearance of things, this would be the phase of the matter. This is important. In order to bring about, not to change, I think this word here is to make the phase of the matter. Your servant Joab has done this thing, but my Lord be wise. My Lord is wise, like the wisdom of the angel of God, to know all that is on the earth. And so these are words that are usually pronounced to be blessings or good terms to honor the king. I think that would be a good way of saying it. And then the king said to Joab, behold, now I will certainly do this thing. Go then, bring back the young man of Shalom. And by this whole charade, it affected David. And David was very empathetic to what Joab is suggesting. In verse 22, you can say that, and this will be, and then, because it already happens with an instruction, and instruction is going to Joab. So after it's said, and then Joab fell on his face to the ground, and this is correct, face to the ground, and then he bowed down or prostrated, and then he prostrated himself on the ground, and then he blessed the king. And then, right, we can have all these terminology. And then Joab said, today your servant knows that I found favor in your sight, my lord the king, in that the king has performed the request of the servant. And so again, I want to point out to you, found favor, right? Found favor has always been in the eyes. And so she is saying, I must have found grace in your eyes, my lord the king, that you have done what I have said. Now, this whole idea, the request of the servant, is about Joab. And Joab was making the request through the woman. And perhaps there is a sense of deniability. If the woman spoke wrongly, he could always find another one. But all of this is showing us that Joab is actually hatching a very decent plan to take care of the heart of David, because he's been longing for Absalom, and finding a way that legally he can actually do that. Now, with this, we come to the end of our session today, and we will continue this tomorrow to see what happened with Avshalom as he comes back.